What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Alright, so we're going to do a full story video. A full story video is when I sit down and take a bunch of videos that tell one overarching story and combine them together into one big video. Now, today's full story video is going to be about Ultimate Spider-Man, written by Jonathan Hickman. I thought it'd be a good idea to kind of give us a quick full story video over the first year of Ultimate Spider-Man, the first year of Peter Parker being Spider-Man in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, to kind of help us get a good idea of what it's like before diving into year 2 of Peter Parker's life in this reality. And so with that being said, guys, I do hope you enjoy today's full story video. What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, guys, so we are finally here. Ultimate Spider-Man #1, written by Jonathan Hickman. Now, we have to remember, when it comes to Ultimate Spider-Man, this is a brand new Ultimate Universe that was created by the Maker. This is Earth 6160. Now, guys, remember, when it came to the Maker, he made this universe in his own image. He made sure that certain people did not become superheroes. For example, Peter Parker. He was never bitten by a spider, so he never did became Spider-Man. And usually when it comes to Peter Parker, when he becomes Spider-Man, he's like 15, 16, 17 years old. But unfortunately though, in this universe, he never was bitten by a spider. And so when we do dive into this series, he's a grown man, he's married to Mary Jane, and they have 2 children. So it's kind of like, okay, how in the world are we going to get the Ultimate Spider-Man? And this is Hickman saying, don't worry, Peter Parker is going to be Spider-Man in this universe, just not in your technical usual way. Yes, he will still get bit by a spider, but for a completely different reason. And so getting into the opening pages for today's video, we do pick up with an older Peter Parker. And this is kind of great because we get to see Peter Parker married to Mary Jane once again. They have 2 kids. It's honestly a great thing to see. Now, with that being said, we do see Peter Parker kind of exhausted. He's tired for some strange reason, with a lot of different things going on in his life. Now, as we go through this book, we're going to learn about those different things that are currently affecting his life. But either way, he has to leave for work. Now, before he does leave for work, he does take something out of his daughter's hand, and we're kind of left to wonder, what is that device that she was currently holding? Because apparently to him it is very important, and he wants to remind his children it is not a toy at all. But either way, he is worried about something going on in his life currently. Now, you do have Peter Parker arrive at work. Now, when he does arrive at work at the Daily Bugle, he is confronted by J. Jonah Jameson. Now, here's the thing, because you can tell right off the bat that these 2 characters, there's no bad blood at all between these 2 characters. That matter of fact, they have a great relationship with one another, which honestly is a great thing to see. Now, when it came to JJ, he was calling out for Parker, but he was not calling out for Peter Parker. He was calling out for Uncle Ben, who actually works at the Daily Bugle, and matter of fact, he is a managing editor, which for me, that's a great thing to see for the character. Now, you could say that because Peter Parker did not become Spider-Man, that Uncle Ben was able to survive and live an actual good life, and to see his nephew grow up, get married, and have his own family. Now, when it comes to Peter Parker and Uncle Ben, they're getting ready to leave for some kind of event. Now, before they do leave, you have Peter pull JJ to the side. And this is where we come to find out that JJ and Uncle Ben, they've been long-term friends. And so it's Peter asking JJ, hey, is Uncle Ben okay? Now, we have no idea why Peter Parker felt like he needed to ask Uncle Ben's old friend Jonah to figure out if Uncle Ben is okay, because we have no idea what happened to Uncle Ben. Well, actually, we kind of do know what happened to Uncle Ben, thanks to Ultimate Universe #1. But you do have JJ say, listen, you know your uncle. He is hard as stone. He's not someone who goes around sharing his feelings. But if you want to know how he's doing, why not go ahead and ask him yourself? And so you do have Peter ask his uncle, like, hey, how are you doing? And you have Uncle Ben turn over to Peter and say, how do you think I'm doing, Peter? You know what? I want you to think like this. You moved in with me and Aunt May when you were 15 years old after your parents died. That was 20 years ago. And have you ever stopped thinking about them? And you have Peter say, no. And so then you have Uncle Ben say, then now you know how I feel then. And so now we know it has to do something with Aunt May. And that is why I say Ultimate Universe #1 plays a huge role with this book, but especially with Uncle Ben, because Aunt May died in an incident that happened at the tail end of Ultimate Universe #1. Because remember, in Ultimate Universe #1, the Maker Council was trying to pick up where the Maker left off at. And one of the things they were trying to do is to make Tony Stark look bad, but to hopefully kill him off as well, to make him look like a terrorist that had sacrificed himself to do damage to the city. And so when it came to the Maker Council, they used one of Stark's satellites as a way to shoot down a powerful blast that hit right in the middle of the city, killing off countless people. Now, we're also to believe that Iron Man, Tony Stark, and also Reed Richards of this universe were killed off. We already know they're most likely alive. Either way, though, when that blast hit, a lot of lives were lost, including Aunt May. But on top of that, we kind of find out Norman Osborn is dead, and so is his wife, which leaves Harry Osborn on his own without his parents. Something else I do want to mention is that we do see Matt Murdock of this universe. Now, he is not Daredevil. He's just a regular reverend who's right now giving out a speech about the idea of losing so many people because of that incident. But you also have Harry Osborn talk as well at this event. Now, we are told by Mary Jane and Peter Parker that Peter and Harry, they weren't really close friends at all when it came to growing up. Another huge change in this universe. But on top of that though, Uncle Ben kind of knew Norman a tad bit, only because Norman was interviewed by Ben so many times over the years. But now we know that Norman Osborn is dead. Aunt May is also dead, and so is Harry Osborn's mother. Now, technically, we already knew that when it came to Harry's mother, that she was dead, because in Ultimate Universe #1, it did say like, hey, she died in this incident, but so did Norman as well, and Aunt May. Now, we do jump back over to the Daily Bugle, and when we do, we see that there's a certain problem going on at the Daily Bugle, and that problem is about the idea of what the paper has been saying about the event that happened in New York. Because apparently when it comes to the Daily Bugle, they do pick one particular side about how they feel about the incident that involved Tony Stark, but also the loss of Aunt May and other people who were hit in that area. And so when Ben Parker and also Peter arrived back at the Daily Bugle, well, we kind of find out there was a board meeting, and the meeting went so bad that JJ quit. He walks out mad. Now Ben goes in and he does ask like, hey, what's going on? Now we are also introduced to Robbie Robertson, where we kind of find out that he also works at the Daily Bugle. Well, he's part of the board, but so is Wilson Fisk as well, the Kingpin. Well, actually, we have no idea if he is the Kingpin of this world as well. But we kind of find out they're telling Ben, hey, we told JJ how we felt about what the paper has been saying about the incident. And so because of that, we told him to tone it down or to change his ways. He quit. And so now it's time for you to say if you agree or not. If you do, you get a promotion. If you don't, you are out of here. And we can already tell that no matter what, Ben Parker was going to quit, because if JJ did, so would Ben Parker. Now, when it comes to the Kingpin, I want to say it's a couple hours after the previous moment, but once you have the Kingpin getting out of his car, and luckily he does, the car blows up. It was attacked by some kind of bomb. And when you have one of the bodyguards of the Kingpin look up into the sky, you know who he sees? He sees the Green Goblin. And we're left to wonder, who could the Green Goblin possibly be? Now, we could say it's Harry Osborn, but this is a brand new universe, and this is Jonathan Hickman. So, it could be anybody wearing the Green Goblin suit, actually. But then we actually pick up with Uncle Ben and J. Jonah Jameson. Now, when we do, it's really more about the idea, what are they going to do now, because they no longer have a job, where we come to find out they are going to try to make their own paper. And this is kind of cool, because now it's like, okay, most likely we could see Uncle Ben survive for more than just one story arc, maybe 2 or 3 story arcs. And we see him and JJ being able to build some kind of paper and possibly do stories on Spider-Man to see how they feel about, a character like Spider-Man being around in New York, but also a character like Green Goblin as well. And so this makes things kind of interesting. Now, they do offer Peter a job, and you have Peter wonder, hey, do you have money though? Because I got a family to take care of, my dude. Now, you do have JJ walk away, and when he does, you did have a conversation happen between Peter Parker and Uncle Ben. Now, when it comes to this conversation, I really do like this a lot, because it's Peter Parker still being able to come to Uncle Ben about the idea of asking for advice, because even though Peter Parker is still 35 years old, he still kind of needs that help when it comes to making big time decisions. And honestly, when we do see Peter Parker, most of the time we see him go to Aunt May, and so it's kind of refreshing to see him being able to go and talk to Uncle Ben. Now, when it comes to Peter, he tells Uncle Ben, I feel like there's something wrong with me. That's something wrong with my life. Now, this right here is a huge hint to the idea that because Peter Parker was never bit by that spider, thanks to the Maker, is him kind of saying to himself, I feel like there's something wrong with me, something wrong with my life. And so you have Uncle Ben tell Peter, if you feel like that, then you know what? Make a change. Do something about it. Make your life better. You're the only person who has the ability to actually do that. Now, you do have Peter being able to go back home to Mary Jane and also his 2 kids. Now, when he does go home to them and being able to put his kids to sleep, it's time for him and Mary Jane to have a conversation. Now, right off the bat, you have Peter tell Mary Jane everything that happened at the Daily Bugle about the idea of Uncle Ben and JJ quitting, but also them deciding to make their own paper. But then it leads into a more serious conversation about something big that Peter had told Mary Jane, that he felt like he needs to change things in his life. He needs to do something different. And so you have Mary Jane being that good wife, just being supportive, but at the same time, she's worried about the idea of the change that he is trying to do. She is worried that it could possibly affect their marriage. Now, Peter tells her, don't worry, it won't affect our marriage. But that's the idea though. He honestly is saying that, but again, he has no idea right now if it could. But again, he wants to make sure that it doesn't. And so he tells Mary Jane, hey, don't worry. The change I'm going to do is not going to affect you, me, nor my relationship with my kids. Everything is going to be okay. And so she tells Peter, then go for it. Go for it, Tiger. Just do it. And so then we kind of find out what this change could possibly be, because then we jump back to the previous night where Peter Parker was confronted by some kind of device, and out of nowhere a hologram appears of Tony Stark. Now this hologram, this device, comes from the future, 6 months in the future. So now we know that Tony Stark did not die, and the other heroes who were near him, Steve Rogers, Thor, and most likely Reed Richards of this universe, they did not die. They had survived. And so with that being said, there's somewhere in the future, they send this device back to begin the process of changing the world. Because remember, the Maker went around the world to make sure that certain people never did become heroes they were supposed to be, like Peter Parker. And so you have Tony say, I'm going to change that. I'm in the future right now, but my goal here in the present is to go around and begin the process of waking up the people who were supposed to be heroes, starting with you. And so he left behind some kind of stuff to help Peter become the Spider-Man of this world. And so to close on today's video, we do jump back to the present day. And when we do pick up with Peter Parker currently opening up what was left behind by Tony Stark, where we kind of find out it is a spider. And you already know what that means. That spider is going to bite Peter Parker. That spider is going to turn Peter Parker into Spider-Man. We have now gotten our Ultimate Spider-Man in the brand new Ultimate Marvel Universe. And we're left to wonder what could possibly happen next. And so okay, so getting back into our coverage over Ultimate Spider-Man, written by Jonathan Hickman, we do pick up with Peter Parker sitting down eating breakfast with his two kids. Now, I want to tell you right off the bat that you are going to see a photo of the black suit. I'm going to tell you, it's not the symbiote suit. Instead, it's a black suit that Peter Parker wears when he's out there trying to be Spider-Man, but also wears when he's trying to learn how to control his newfound powers. Now, with that being said, when it comes to Peter Parker, while sitting down with his kids looking over that photo, we kind of find out that his two kids, they have no idea that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. To these two new kids, it's some new guy who appeared in their area wearing a black suit and trying to help out the area. And that's really it. Now, when it comes to his daughter, May finds the new Spider-Man suit very scary. Now, for Peter Parker, he kind of takes that to the heart. And the reason why, because even though his kids may not know that that was him in that photo, still to hear your daughter say that he looks scary can really bother you. Either way, the section does end with Mary Jane saying she has to go to work, and you have Peter Parker also getting ready to leave for work as well. Now, the next section really does give us the chance to see Peter Parker wearing the black suit, while we see him trying to learn how to web swing. Now, while trying to learn that, we also have Peter Parker tell us that when it came to him being bitten by that spider, his life has completely changed, to the point where he's now eating at least 10,000 calories a day. And on top of that, he does not need to sleep as much as he used to. But either way, it's still kind of cool to see Peter Parker in this learning process, trying to learn how he's going to balance a life as a hero, but as a life as a father and husband as well. And so either way, it's just Peter Parker wearing the black suit and still learning how to use his new powers. Now, we do jump over to Uncle Ben and J. Jonah Jameson. Now, remember, these two guys used to work at the Daily Bugle, but they had left the company because of Wilson Fisk, the owner of the Daily Bugle. Because when it comes to our two characters here, they weren't allowed to write certain stories that were happening across America, that was happening in New York, because of Wilson Fisk and his agenda. And so you had these two characters leave the Bugle and begin the process of trying to build up their own newspaper company. Now, while you have the two men talking to one another, you have Uncle Ben bring up the Green Goblin. Now, I do want to say real quick that no one in the book is actually calling him the Green Goblin. It's just us fans are calling him that because he looks like the Green Goblin. Either way, apparently there have been more attacks between this chapter and the last chapter, where you had the Green Goblin really trying to kill off the Kingpin, but unfortunately he keeps failing over and over again. But he keeps trying over and over again. And so you have our two characters wondering, who in the world is the Green Goblin? And matter of fact, when it comes to us readers, we're also wondering, hey, who in the world is the Green Goblin? But that leads us into the moment to see Peter Parker being a hero and fighting his first super villain. And that would be the Shocker. Now guys, real quick, when I saw the Shocker, I had flashbacks to the original Ultimate Marvel Universe Shocker. And the reason why, because that Shocker was a joke. Brian Michael Bendis would only use that character as a way to kind of open up his books, or to use the Shocker as a way to move the story forward. And that was really it. The Shocker was never big in that Ultimate Marvel universe. But either way, in this book, the Shocker is going to be Peter Parker's first super villain. And so we see the Shocker trying to break into a building. Now, you have Peter Parker swing by, and instead of trying to fight the Shocker, he tries to talk to the Shocker. And that really shows that when it comes to Peter Parker, he has no idea what in the world should he do when it comes to facing a super villain. But on top of that, he's kind of hoping that maybe they can just work things out with their words rather than their fists. And so you have Peter actually telling Shocker, I have no idea what in the world I'm doing here. Like, I know I'm trying to be a hero. I know I'm trying to use my powers to make sure I can be a great hero. But besides that, I have no idea what in the world I'm going to do. Now, when it comes to the Shocker, he actually tricks Spider-Man by saying, you know what? After our conversation, I realized that I'm just being desperate for money, that this is the wrong move to take here. I need to find better moves when it comes to trying to find some money. So you know what? I am going to go ahead and walk away. Now, here's the thing. Peter Parker's words were not really that great to convince someone to actually give up being a supervillain. So you could tell right off the bat that this was going to be a trick, because you had a Shocker just turn around and use his powers on Spider-Man, sending him flying across the street into another building. And for Peter Parker, he realized, okay, that was my first superhero mistake. I have to learn from that. And so you have Peter Parker go home after losing his battle against the Shocker. Except when he does get home, he is confronted by his daughter. Now, let's not forget, when it came to May and Richard, his children, they had no idea that he was Spider-Man. And so when it comes to May, she's kind of like, oh my God, my father is Spider-Man. But let's not forget, she also told her father at the very beginning of this video that she found his suit very scary. It made him look very scary. And so at first, she believed that Spider-Man had just broke into her house trying to eat ice cream, to only find out that Spider-Man is her father. Now, we also come to find out that Mary Jane has no idea that Peter Parker is being Spider-Man, because you have Peter tell May, you're not allowed to tell your brother or your mother. I'll tell them when I'm ready. So Mary Jane has no clue that Peter Parker's out there being Spider-Man, which is pretty wild. And so we jump over to the Kingpin having a conversation with Captain Britain. Now remember, Captain Britain is part of the Maker's Council. When the Maker arrived in this world and made it his own image, he built a council to kind of help him make sure that everything stays under control. Now, with the Maker being gone, his council are trying to make sure that everything still stays under their control. Now, when it comes to the council, they have begun the process of allowing different people to have kingdoms in different parts of the world. Now, when it comes to Kingpin, it's not like he's actually the king of the area. It's not really like you have people calling him King Wilson Fisk. Instead, he's able to control the area with crime. He's able to control the area with his newspaper company. He is able to control the area by being a criminal with his money. And so you have the Kingpin telling Captain Britain, hey man, listen, I'm trying to make sure that everything stays under control, but I've been attacked by this random Green Goblin person and I have no idea what to do here. And so you have Captain Britain say, listen, you should had come to us. You know we have the resources to actually help you bring down your enemies. If you're telling us that somebody is coming after you, then guess what? We have somebody that you could use to bring him down. Now, we do see a third person at this meeting. And at first, I believed it was Nick Fury. But at the same time, it could be Bullseye. I don't know why. I just feel like it's Bullseye. But again, it could be Nick Fury because of the eye patch. Now, getting back over to Spider-Man, you have him one more time try to be a hero, trying to stop a super villain. And of course, he runs into the Shocker again. And this is why I can say I like this Shocker way more than Brian Michael Bendis' Shocker in the original Ultimate Spider-Man. Because this Shocker is not a joke. This Shocker is giving Peter Parker a run for his money. And so even though our hero is trying his best and at first is doing a better job fighting against the Shocker, he still loses. And you have the Shocker just beat down on Peter Parker and leave once again. Now, we also kind of find out their battle was being watched by the Green Goblin. Now, here's the thing, because it could be the Green Goblin getting ready to possibly try to recruit Spider-Man onto his side to go after supervillains, but to also go after Kingpin as well. But for this moment, all we see is Green Goblin watching Peter lose again to the Shocker. But you have Peter Parker go back home after losing to the Shocker, except when he goes back home this time, it's a guy who's really thinking of the idea of giving up being a hero. Because one, he's still having a hard time learning how to control his new powers, but two, he just lost to the Shocker twice. And so for our hero, he's kind of like, dude, you know what? This sucks. I'm horrible. I should just go ahead and give up. Except he does see a drawing that was left behind by his daughter. In that drawing is a spider symbol. And it's her kind of saying, hey, you know, I drew this for you. But with Peter Parker seeing that, he's kind of like, you know what? I just need to slow down. You know what? Let me go ahead and take it one step at a time. And sooner or later, I will be a great hero. So I'm not going to give up. I am still going to continue and try to be Spider-Man. And this is what What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. All right, so we are going to continue our coverage over Ultimate Spider-Man, written by Jonathan Hickman, and we do pick up with the third issue. Now, we do pick up with Mary Jane and also Richard Parker kind of wondering what in the world Peter Parker and May Parker are actually up to. Now, remember, when it comes to Spider-Man in this universe, only him and May Parker know about him being Spider-Man. Mary Jane, his wife, and Richard, his son, they have no idea. But you do have the two characters acting very suspicious and kind of wondering what in the world are they possibly up to. And we come to find out that May is helping out her father Peter decide what design he should go with when he's out there being Spider-Man. And I really love this moment a lot for two different reasons. The first is that while you have Peter trying to show her different designs that he feels should be okay as Spider-Man, they're really just classic suits that we have seen in the main Marvel Universe Spider-Man. But at the same time, we saw this coming in the last chapter when it came to May Parker helping out her father design his suit to be Spider-Man. And so after a couple suits, you did have Peter and May finally decide to go with the red and blue outfit, the classic red and blue Spider-Man outfit. We then pick up with J. Jonah Jameson and Uncle Ben. Now remember, these two characters had left the Daily Bugle because they wanted more freedom when it came to reporting on stories that were happening in the city, especially because the Kingpin made sure that most of the stories that did get published were ones that he wanted to talk about. Now, with that being said, you now have JJ and Uncle Ben trying their best to make their own paper, and we see the two characters finding an office building to begin the process of opening up their own paper. But here's the problem. The office building is run down. It looks horrible. But hey, it's all their money could actually afford. Now you do have Peter Parker arrive to see the place as well. And just like us, we're like, man, this is a hot mess. But either way, you didn't have Peter realize that JJ and Uncle Ben have a map of something going on in the city. Now on this map, there are different locations that have been hit by the Green Goblin. And every single one of those places belongs to the Kingpin. And we have been seeing that in the earlier chapters of Ultimate Spider-Man. Now when it comes to Peter and Uncle Ben and JJ, they're just sharing notes. But the thing is, all they know is that this Green Goblin person is going around trying to attack different places that belong to the Kingpin. But when it comes to the Kingpin, he wants to make sure that when it comes to their papers, the Daily Bugle, they don't talk about anything about the Green Goblin, but only about Spider-Man. Now, I should mention the world, or really just New York City, they don't call Peter Parker Spider-Man yet. They say the guy in the black suit because they have not seen him in his red and blue suit yet. And so you have Peter Parker head over to a building that is also owned by the Kingpin because he's hoping that the Green Goblin will also attack that building like he did the others. Now, when it comes to Peter, he is dressed as Spider-Man in his red and blue suit for the first time out in the open for the public to see. Now, with that being said, while he does stake out the building, you do see the Green Goblin appear, except the Green Goblin is fighting against Bullseye. We get our first look of Ultimate Bullseye in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. Now, let me say, I really do like his suit a lot. It's not over the top, it's just perfect enough for me to say, you know what? That's a cool suit, and I want to see more of this character down the road in later books. Now, when it comes to Green Goblin, he believes that Bullseye is working for the Kingpin, not knowing that Bullseye is working for, supposedly, the real masters of the world. Now, for Green Goblin Spider-Man, they're kind of wondering, what does he mean by that? But we know what he means by that. He is talking about the Maker's Council. Because remember, when it came to Ultimate Invasion, we were introduced to the idea that the Maker came to this timeline to make this world in its own image. but he also had the help of his council to make sure things ran smoothly. Now, when it came to the end of Ultimate Invasion, the Maker got locked away in his own city. And so now his council, they have to go out of the way to make sure the world stays the same as the Maker left it. And so it's Bullseye saying, hey, I work for the real masters, but we already know that he is talking about the Maker's council. Either way, you do have Spider-Man jump into the battle to help out the Green Goblin to fight against Bullseye, because Bullseye is a very, good opponent for Spider-Man and Green Goblin, especially Spider-Man. You are talking about the idea of a guy whose main power is to be able to hit perfectly with his weapon when he throws them. And for Peter, you're still kind of learning the ropes of being a hero. And really, it's the same thing for the Green Goblin as well, because technically it seems he is also a hero, and he's still learning how to be a hero when going up against a character like Bullseye. But it does lead into Spider-Man and Green Goblin being able to take down Bullseye. But after doing that, it leads into a conversation between the two characters. Now, let's not forget that Harry Osborn and Peter Parker, they are not friends like they were in the main Marvel universe. But this is the beginning of their friendship. Oh yeah, I should probably mention that Harry Osborn is Green Goblin, and how we find out that he is the Green Goblin. But I do want to say it's not really a surprise, because we saw it coming literally ever since Ultimate Spider-Man #1. But either way, when it comes to Peter Parker's suit, it's not just your regular spandex suit that he puts on, it's technology based, thanks to Iron Lad. And so when it came to his mask, it began to malfunction and began to go away, to the point where it shows Green Goblin that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Now for Green Goblin, he's kind of like, listen, if you are going to tell me who you are, even though you wasn't your choice, I should go ahead and tell you who I am as well. And so you have Harry Osborn take off his Green Goblin helmet to show us that it is Harry Osborn who is the Green Goblin. Now, like I said earlier though, these two characters are not friends at all. Literally, they have never talked to each other at all. They have lived two different lives away from each other. But this is the beginning of their friendship, or possibly the beginning of the dynamic duo of heroes in New York City that could most likely have a horrible ending when it comes to later books down the road for Ultimate Spider-Man. But either way, this is where we are. Okay, so getting back into our coverage over Ultimate Spider-Man, we do pick up with the 4th chapter. Now, we do pick up with Peter Parker and Mary Jane getting ready to have dinner with Harry Osborn. Now, remember, in our last video, Harry Osborn found out that Peter Parker was Spider-Man, and well, Peter Parker found out that Green Goblin was Harry Osborn. And so now you have the two guys being friends and trying to work together to protect the world or take down the Maker's Council as well. But while you have the three people getting ready to have dinner, you have Harry Osborn mention the idea that, well, he's also married. Now, for me personally, I was kind of thinking like, okay, we're going to see, maybe Liz Allen or somebody else random who we have seen in the past in the main Marvel universe. But we actually see it's Gwen Stacy. Now, when it comes to Gwen Stacy being the wife of Harry Osborn, I was kind of shocked by this, but now we are able to see what will Jonathan Hickman do with Ultimate Gwen Stacy. I'm pretty sure he's going to do something very interesting with this character down the road. But now you have all four characters sitting down to have dinner with one another, to have the chance to actually get to know one another. Now, Harry Osborn and Peter Parker, they know each other, but for Gwen Stacy and Mary Jane, this could be the start of their friendship. Now, we do kind of learn more about Mary Jane here, how she has her own PR firm, and she does talk about the idea of different clients that she has at the moment. But one of the clients she does have is actually Uncle Ben and J. Jonah Jameson. Because remember, those two guys left the Daily Bugle because all the shadiness going on in that company. And so now they're starting their own newspaper company. And speaking of Uncle Ben and also J. Jonah Jameson, we do pick up with those two guys celebrating the idea of their paper coming out very soon. But while they're celebrating, we see that Uncle Ben is watching over May and Richard Parker, the children of Peter and Mary Jane. Now, here's the thing, because while you have Uncle Ben watching over the kids and talking to JJ, we kind of find out that May Parker, the daughter of Peter Parker and Mary Jane, she does not like J. Jonah Jameson at all. And so we're kind of getting a hint here that JJ did something in the past. But the question is right now, what? Over to the dinner, and when we do, we see that you have Gwen Stacy and Harry Osborn telling Peter Parker and Mary Jane what Uncle Ben and JJ are gonna have to do if they want to see their paper actually succeed. So when it comes to Gwen and Harry, they are talking about the idea that most of these news channels or news companies, period, across the world, they're very corporate based, meaning that they don't dig deep enough to actually get the details the world wants to know or possibly needs to know. And so her example is the Daily Bugle. Spider-Man. What is his deal? When it comes to the Daily Bugle, their reports are very small, quick, and fast, and that's really it. But again, the world wants to know, who is Spider-Man? Is he good? Is he bad? What's his goal? Why is he here in New York only? Like, what is the actual game plan or purpose of this character? And that is where Uncle Ben and JJ could actually succeed. Be different from the others. Get different kinds of reports that other companies are not trying to get. Now, when it comes to Gwen, she does talk about the idea that she really loves the whole Spider-Man angle, that he's a great hero possibly, but the world needs to know more about him. Now we jump back over to Uncle Ben, who just put May Parker to bed, but now he's talking to Richard Parker. Now, when it comes to Richard, he also mentions the idea that how May Parker does not like JJ at all. Again, hinting at the idea that he did something big in the past and the reason why she hates him. But we kind of find out there are a lot of people across the world who actually hate JJ a lot, and they all have the right to actually hate him. And so now we're kind of wondering, what did JJ do possibly to have a lot of people hate him, including a child like May Parker? Because her father, Peter, continues to work alongside with Uncle Ben and JJ. So that means something big must have happened and is connected to her as well. Now, getting back over to Mary Jane and Gwen Stacy, we see the two characters currently inside the restroom, and you have Gwen Stacy go out of her way to ask Mary Jane a very huge favor. You see, when it comes to Gwen, her and Harry have a lot of money, and they want to use that money in different kinds of ways. And so when it comes to Gwen, she does ask Mary Jane, hey, are you able to actually set up a meeting between me and Uncle Ben and JJ? Because I got some big plans and I got a lot of money that I want to use. But while you have the ladies in the bathroom, you have Harry and Peter continue to talk to one another at the table. Now, when it comes to their conversation, you have Harry realize that Peter has not told Mary Jane that he is Spider-Man, but Peter realized that Harry has told Gwen Stacy that he is the Green Goblin. Now for Peter, it's more of like, hey, listen, I do not want her to get hurt because of my superhero life. So if I don't tell her, then most likely she won't get hurt. But you have Harry say, that's dumb, because here's the thing, dude. You and I are trying to take down the Maker's Council. We got some big goals ahead of us. But with those goals, most likely the people we love are going to get involved. So why not go ahead and tell them? And most likely they could get hurt. And so it's better for you to tell them now before they get hurt, and then find out that the reason why they got hurt is because of you. And so then you have Harry drop the famous line, with great power comes with great responsibility. Because you also have Peter say that he does not know for sure that he wants to be a hero, that he wants to take down the Maker's Council. But you have Harry say, dude, I seen you in action. I know you enjoy the idea of being a hero. I know that you agree that we have to take down the Maker's Council. You have great power, and that great power comes with great responsibility. And so use that power to help me take down the Maker's Council, but to also tell your wife, my dude. Like, tell her before she possibly gets hurt. Tell Uncle Ben, tell JJ, tell the loved ones of yours before something bad happens. And so after dinner, we do see Peter and Mary Jane walking down the street. But while walking, you have Peter begin to talk to Mary Jane about the idea of heroes, and kind of hinting that possibly sooner or later, he's going to tell Mary Jane about him being Spider-Man. But for right now, he's still not ready. He's still not sure if he wants to be Spider-Man. And if he does, then maybe he'll tell her then. But okay, so getting back into our coverage over Ultimate Spider-Man with Ultimate Spider-Man number 5, we actually pick up with Norman Osborn. Now, we're in the past. This is months ago in the past, but we do pick up with Norman Osborn and Emily. And you have the two characters right now talking about the idea of their son being late once again. And of course, they are talking about Harry Osborn. Now, when it comes to Harry, he tries his best to call up his dad and say, hey, Dad, listen, this is why I am going to be late, but don't worry, I am nearby. But for Norman, it doesn't matter. You should always be on time for almost every single thing, no matter what. And matter of fact, you have Norman tell Harry, I'm still waiting for you to show me that you are a man and not a boy. Now, right after Norman says that, we pick up at the moment when Stark Tower gets blown up thanks to the Maker's Cabal. And so Harry Osborn, his last conversation with his father is really more of his dad being upset with him, but then having to see blocks away Stark Tower getting blown up in front of his eyes. Now, a few weeks after that moment, we do pick up with Harry and Gwen. Now remember, in this new Ultimate Universe, Harry and Gwen are married, which honestly made things a tad bit more interesting for Spider-Man fans out there. But when it comes to Harry and Gwen, they're having a conversation with Norman Osborn's lawyer. Now, when it comes to his lawyer, he does inform Harry that Harry is going to inherit every single thing that his father had left behind, including the company. Now, when it comes to Harry, he also gets word that somebody left a message for him. Now, the lawyer says he has no idea what this message actually means, but he does know who had left it behind. And of course, the message came from the Kingpin, Wilson Fisk. Now, to the outside world, it may seem that the Kingpin is just your regular businessman and that's it. But in reality, in the shadows, this man is the governor of the greater New York territory. And also, he is the Kingpin of crime of Manhattan. Now, when it comes to the Kingpin, the reason why he called this meeting with Harry is to talk about the company that was left behind by Obadiah Stane and the Stark family. Because remember, in the Ultimate Marvel universe, those two families actually work together. They share the company with one another. But Obadiah Stane died a while back, and currently there's no Starks around at the moment. And so Kingpin owns the company, but he wants to make sure there is no way that this company could possibly rise up and cause him more problems down the road. And so he believes that Harry can do a great job to make sure this company is completely destroyed. He says, Harry, I am going to sell you the company. I want to make sure there is no way down the road that this company can bite me in some kind of way. So I want you to take care of getting rid of everything left in that company. Now, 2 weeks after that conversation, we do pick up with Harry Osborn, Gwen, and also Dr. Octavius. Yes, you heard that right. We're getting our first look at Dr. Octavius. Now, the three characters were able to find a lab that was left behind by the Starks. And once they are able to break into the lab, they find all these different Iron Man suits and different kinds of technology inside this room. But also, they find a database that contains a lot of information about the Cabal and also Wilson Fisk. Now, when it comes to Dr. Octavius, like I said, he works for Harry Osborn. And so you have Harry assign Doc Ock to go through every single piece of data inside that database to learn everything about what's going on inside this lab. And also what kind of information was kept on the different members of the Cabal, especially Wilson Fisk. And Doc Ock is down with the idea of doing everything for Harry and Gwen. Now, we do jump forward in time to the point where now we're only 4 months from the present day. And so now we pick up with Harry Osborn getting his Green Goblin suit. The suit was actually created by Doc Ock, and he was only able to create it by using the tech that was left behind in this lab. Now, when it comes to Doc Ock, he also tells Harry, listen, man, when I turn your suit online, something else happened. You see, across the world, apparently there are different pieces of Stark tech out there, just hidden. But on top of that, they all came online in a matter of a few minutes. Minute by minute, a new one would pop up on my map. And for some strange reason, they're all coming online now. And so you have Harry say, okay, you know what? That is weird. You know what? Let me go out of my way to go around the world to collect all these different pieces of tech, because maybe we could use that to go after our targets, because now he knows who is his targets. He now knows the Cabal. He also knows about Wilson Fisk. But now we have to jump forward to 3 months ago, where we pick up with Harry going after the Shocker. And the Shocker had just defeated Spider-Man. Now, when it comes to Harry, he wants to know more about the gloves the Shocker is using. Really, he wants to know how in the world did the Shocker find the gloves? And you have the Shocker say, listen, I was trying to rob a place. And matter of fact, the man I was robbing from, he basically died from a heart attack. But when I entered the main room, I saw a bunch of lights. I saw a hologram of Tony Stark, but in an Iron Man suit. And then he disappeared. But after disappearing, I realized he left the gloves behind. Now, here's the thing. For Harry, now he knows that Tony is alive, because to the world, they believe that Tony is dead. But now Harry knows, no, he's alive. But also, the gloves Shocker is using came from Tony Stark. And so you have Harry knock out the Shocker and take the gloves away from him. And so now we jump forward to 2 months ago, and now we pick up with Harry and Peter having a drink together at a bar. Now, when it comes to this meeting, it's really more just the two of them kind of talking about the idea of how they became who they are. How did Peter become Spider-Man? How did Harry Osborn become the Green Goblin? Now, for Peter, he believed that Harry had a similar incident like he did when it came to him becoming Spider-Man, that Harry was also confused confronted by Tony Stark. But you have Harry say, no, listen, I became the Green Goblin the hard way by buying the company and then looking through all the different files of the company to learn there are some bad folks out there that need to be taken care of. Now, once you have the two characters kind of learn about each other origin story, it kind of shows that this was the beginning of their friendship. And so finally getting into the present day, we do pick up with Harry Osborn right now being the Green Goblin, but about to torture Bullseye, Ultimate Bullseye. Now, when it comes to Bullseye, we believed at first that when it came to his ability to be a great marksman was just skills. Come to find out that no, embedded in his skin is some kind of exoskeleton that kind of gives him the ability to be a great marksman. Now, when it comes to Bullseye, he's working for the Kingpin. This is Harry saying, I'm going to torture you until I am able to get all the answers I want from you. And the thing is, I feel like the world is a whole lot safer with you inside of here and not out there killing innocent people. Now, when it comes to Bullseye, he's all like, dude, listen, I understand you want the answers. I'm going to tell you right now, though, I have seen a lot of people wanting to be heroes, but the problem is those heroes are never up to the idea of sacrifice. They have no idea how much they have to sacrifice to be a hero in this world. But for for Harry, he does not care. Harry says, oh, okay, cool, listen, I am going to show the world I'm no longer that boy my dad saw in the past, that now I'm a man. I'm going to show you that I'm going to get the answers I want from you, no matter how long it takes. And the book ends on that. What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we're going to continue our coverage over Ultimate Spider-Man by Jonathan Hickman, and we pick up with issue number 6. And this is Ultimate Spider-Man and the Green Goblin working together to fight against the Kingpin, except it does not go the way you actually think it would go. And you see what I mean as we go through today's video. Now, something we have to remember that when it comes to Peter Parker's family in this reality, the only person who truly knows about him being Spider-Man is his daughter, May. And that is really it. Mary Jane and his son Richard, they have no idea that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Well, until now, because you have Peter Parker coming back home but badly beaten, and they're kind of wondering, what in the world happened to you? This man got a black eye, guys. It's kind of like, okay, maybe he'll be able to play it off, until his daughter almost mentioned the idea of him being Spider-Man. And so that is the moment he realized that he has no choice but to go ahead and tell his wife and son that he is actually a superhero, that he is actually Spider-Man. And this begins the flashback. And so we jump to the previous night where we pick up with Peter Parker and Harry Osborn being Spider-Man and also the Green Goblin. Now, technically, these two guys are best friends. They know almost everything about each other, but now they're going to work together to bring down the Kingpin. You see, when it comes to the Green Goblin, Harry, he had learned from Bullseye that Kingpin technically works for somebody else. Now, we already know who that is. It's the Maker's Council. With the Maker being locked away right now inside his city, the Maker left the Council in charge of the entire world, and the Kingpin was left in charge of Manhattan, but he still has to answer to the Council. And so when it comes to the Green Goblin and also Spider-Man, their goal is to bring down the Kingpin as a way to get to the higher up, the Maker's Council. And so they gotta break into his home to basically bring him down. Now, for the Kingpin, he knew that Spider-Man and the Green Goblin were on their way. This man has cameras placed all over the city, and he knew that they were watching his building. He was just waiting for them to make the first move. And so when they did, when they broke into his home and confronted him, he said, perfect. It's now time for our showdown. And that is when they realized that this was a trap. This man placed a cage around them saying, no one is going to leave until one of us drops. Me? Are you guys. Now you would think, okay, it's Spider-Man the Green Goblin. They should be able to take him down very easily. Nope, the Kingpin got some upgrades. Apparently, some stuff was done to him to make him, extra strong than usual, to actually be a challenge for the Green Goblin and Spider-Man. And there is a point where you have the Green Goblin almost be killed off by the Kingpin, but Peter was able to jump back in to save his life. But then the Kingpin said, fine, if you want my attention, I will give you my attention. And then you have the Kingpin begin to beat down on Peter Parker. You're kind of like, man, the Kingpin is not playing around here. Now, luckily for the Green Goblin, his glider is able to basically explode a wall down to allow our heroes to escape. But the Kingpin was so close to be able to kill off Spider-Man and the Green Goblin by himself. And that shows that our young heroes are so unexperienced, they're not going to be able to take down guys like the Kingpin so easily. They have to be properly ready to take them down when the time comes. And so for the Kingpin, they gotta come back a later time, the right time, when they're actually ready to take him on. And so getting back over to the present day, we see that Peter Parker told that entire story over to his family. Now, when it comes to May, she already knew that he was Spider-Man, but now his son knows. Now his wife knows. And the question is, how is Mary Jane going to take this? Now, his son's kind of like, hey, you know what? I understand who you are, what you are, just please be safe. But Mary Jane, that's the big question right there, because that's his wife. He should have told her a while back. And so they go into the other room. And so we see Peter Parker and Mary Jane go into the other room. Really, it's their bedroom. Now, when it comes to Mary Jane, she tells Peter that she's not angry at all. She's one, confused about the idea of him being Spider-Man and how it all works. But two, she's also proud of him. The idea of him being a hero. And no matter what, she is always going to be by his side. It's great. She's being a very understanding person. Now, here's my problem though, because you also have Mary Jane say she is also concerned about the idea of the Kingpin possibly coming after her and the kids. But Peter tells her no matter what, they should be safe. Nobody should be coming after them to get to him. But the problem is the Kingpin said earlier, all the cameras in the city, they feed into his building. He's watching those cameras, which means sooner or later, the Kingpin might find out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man and Mary Jane is his wife, and Green Goblin's Harry Osborn and his wife is Gwen Stacy. Both women could possibly be targets now by the Kingpin. And really, the last page, we see Peter taking Mary Jane out into the city, showing her what it's like to swing around by webs across Manhattan. Okay, so getting back into our coverage over Ultimate Spider-Man, we're now entering the second story arc. And really, we have been seeing all these different kinds of previews out there, basically telling us the second story arc is going to be the Sinister Six. And I kind of want to see how Jonathan Hickman is going to bring in the different members of the Sinister Six. But we do pick up with Peter Parker, Harry Osborn, and Dr. Octavius. Now, we have to remember that this is the first time Peter Parker is meeting Doc Ock, but at the same time, it's also Peter realizing how smart Doc Ock truly is. Now, with that being said, it's also Doc Ock giving us more information about the actual suits that Peter and Harry wear out in the field. The Spider-Man suit, the Green Goblin suit. Now remember, Doc Ock was the one who kind of created Harry's Green Goblin suit. Because remember, when it came to Harry Osborn, once he was able to buy the remains of Stark's company, he was able to find a secret lab that held all these different Iron Man suits, but it also had all these different files about the Maker and his council as well. But either way, when it came to Doc Ock, once he was able to go through all those different files, he was actually able to build a Green Goblin suit for Harry to use. Now, you do have Doc Ock tell us that the Green Goblin suit and also Peter's suit both run on the same network, a network that was actually built by Tony Stark. Now, the whole idea of this network is actually a big callback to the earlier parts of our coverage over the Ultimates. Because remember, when it came to Tony Stark, after he learned that the Maker made sure that certain people would not have the ability to become heroes, you had Tony say, you know what, let's fix that. So he left behind all these different kinds of containers that held different kind of tech stuff to give someone the ability to become the hero they were supposed to be. And all these different kind of tech or containers were being run on the same network. It also explains how Harry was able to turn off Peter's mask a couple of chapters ago in Ultimate Spider-Man. Either way, when it comes to Doc Ock, he also tells us that when it comes to Peter and Harry's suits, they both have the ability to have an AI inside of them. Now, these AIs are supposed to help out Peter and Harry out in the field. Now, Doc Ock says each AI needs its own kind of personality. Now, for Peter, he's down with the idea of his AI having the same personality as him, basically talking to himself. But for Harry Osborn, he wants his AI to talk and act just like his father, Norman Osborn. And that's going to be really important in later parts of today's video. But now we jump over to Gwen Stacy and also Mary Jane. Sorry, Gwen Osborn, because in this reality, Gwen is married to Harry Osborn. Either way, though, let's not forget that Gwen gave Uncle Ben and J. Jonah Jameson a lot of money to kind of help get their company off the ground. Because remember, those two guys are trying to create their own paper that is completely different from the Daily Bugle. And also, they have more freedom to talk about different things they couldn't talk about over at the Daily Bugle. But the problem is, when you have Mary Jane and Gwen go over to the office of this new company, well, JJ and Uncle Ben are not there. And the question is, where in the world are they? And we learned that Uncle Ben and JJ are meeting up with Robbie Robertson. Now, Robbie, he still works at the Daily Bugle, but the thing is, he's kind of like a spy now for Uncle Ben and JJ, because he's able to collect different pieces of information that is not going to be used at the Daily Bugle, but could be used over on the paper that's owned by JJ and Uncle Ben. And so technically Robbie is a spy for our two guys here. And honestly, I kind of like that for the character. It is a tad bit different for him. But now we have to jump over to Captain Britain. Now, Captain Britain is part of the Maker's Council. For me, the upper ranking of Maker's Council. Either way, you have Captain Britain meeting up with the Kingpin, because the Kingpin is the ruler of this area of the world the Maker had built. Now, for Captain Britain, he had gave Kingpin one of his agents. We do learn that the one he gave over to Kingpin was Bullseye. And as we know, Bullseye is currently being held by the Green Goblin, Harry Osborn. And so for Kingpin, he kind of like, listen, I have no idea what happened to my agent, the one you gave me, but like, My goal is to get payback against the people who are trying to ruin me. So Spider-Man and also the Green Goblin. Now, for Captain Britain, he does have more bullseyes that he can hand over to Kingpin to use against our heroes. But you have Kingpin say, no, I have a different plan in mind. And that plan is to use the Sinister Six. And so just like that, is Hickman saying, hey guys, listen, it's coming very soon. We're going to see the Sinister Six going after Green Goblin, going after Spider-Man, and that could be one heck of a battle coming very soon. But getting back over to Harry and also Peter, we have the two characters right now just going through a training moment, but also trying to use their AIs in the middle of this training moment. Now, when it comes to Peter's AI, it's just Peter again. He made sure his AI think and act just like him. But for Harry, his AI is thinking and acting like Norman Osborn. Now, let's not forget that Norman and Harry did not really have a great relationship with one another in this reality. To Norman, Harry was just one big huge disappointment. And so in the entire time you have Peter and Harry fighting in this training session, you have the AI that's thinking and acting like Norman, just talking down to Harry about the idea of not being good enough to live up to his father's image. That right now Harry is a huge disappointment because he cannot take down Spider-Man. And it really shows that it does get to Harry to the point where he kind of goes too far and sends Peter flying across the room. Now, at the end of the training session, you have Doc Ock realize that there's a third signal on the network right now that's nearby Peter and Harry. Now, at first, I thought, okay, it has to be a member of the Sinister Six, but it's not. It's actually Iron Lad. It's Tony Stark. Because let's not forget, he told Peter, I'll be back in a few months, and I'm hoping by then you're truly a hero because I need your help down the road. And so now we see that this is Iron Lad coming to Peter saying, hey, I laughed at you for a few months. I need to know right now, are you truly ready to be a hero? Or if you are a hero and you are ready to help me, which means the next issue is going to be Iron Lad going up against Peter Parker and Harry Osborn. But this is What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we're going to continue our coverage over Ultimate Spider-Man. And now we pick up with issue number 8. Now, I'm going to tell you, most of the opening pages, or really most of the book, is kind of slow and kind of showing Jonathan Hickman using his good old slow game, trying to get us ready for the big hitters down the road in later chapters for Ultimate Spider-Man. But the ending of this book, even though we only get a few more talking scenes, is still kind of amazing to learn who is going to be the Sinister Six for this reality. And honestly, at first, I was kind of shocked at the different members of this actual group and how they are being brought into this actual story. Now, we'll admit, the opening pages of this book really did bother me a tad bit, and the only reason why, because if you saw our last video, we left off with Peter Parker and Harry Osborn being confronted by Iron Lad, Tony Stark, and it's kind of like, yo, that was a big moment. But then the opening pages of this book picks up about 3 weeks after that moment, where you have Peter Parker getting ready for a big day. And the big day is that it's his kid's birthday. The kids' both birthdays are in the same month. So, to save money, they celebrate both birthdays at once. But either way, we also get reminded that in the last couple of chapters of Ultimate Spider-Man, Peter Parker was able to give his super advanced suit an AI system thanks to Dr. Octavius. But the AI system thinks and acts just like Peter Parker. We saw that in the last chapter. And really, the opening pages are just being used to remind us of that moment. But now we can actually jump back 3 weeks in the past and pick up where the last book left off at, with Peter Parker and Harry Osborn being confronted by Tony Stark. Now, something we have to remember that when it comes to Iron Lad, Tony Stark, his main goal currently is to build up an army of heroes to get ready for the return of the Maker. And really, Spider-Man was on that list, but we do learn that Spider-Man was on the top of that list. Now remember, when it came to the Maker, he came into this reality to make it in his own image, and he made sure that certain people did not become heroes. But we do learn through Iron Lad that Peter Parker was on the top of that list. Now, it kind of shows that how important Spider-Man is to the world of Marvel Comics. And here's the reason why I'm saying that, because you basically have Iron Lad say, listen, the reason why Peter has the most advanced suit out of everybody that he has helped so far turn into actual heroes is because Peter Parker was on the top of the Maker's list. And if you remember back in Ultimate Invasion, we actually saw that when it came to the Maker. At the very end of the first issue, it was the Maker saying, "Hey Peter, how's it going?" And you basically saw the Maker begin the process of making sure that Peter Parker did not become Spider-Man. Now, something else we have to remember that for Harry Osborn, he is the Green Goblin, right? But his suit comes from stolen tech that he technically used when he bought out the company of Howard and Tony Stark. And so for Tony, he's kind of like, hey, who's this guy over here wearing this green suit of one of my father's old armor? And for Harry, he's kind of wondering if he was on the list at all. Now, at first, you do have Harry trying to hide his face from Tony. But because the tech used to belong to Tony and Howard, Tony knew how to easily access the armor to show off the face of Harry Osborn. Be all like, oh, you're Harry Osborn. I heard about you. I heard that you bought my company after I had left originally with my Ultimates team. Now, you do have Tony tell Harry, like, dude, no, like, you were not on the list of Reed Richards. But here's the thing. Even though you are now technically wearing stolen tech, I believe if you use that tech correctly to help out this guy right here, sooner or later, you're going to live up to a special kind of respect from other people. Meaning that even though you are not on the list of the Maker, it does not mean you're not important. It means that you have the ability to make yourself important when it comes time to actually take him down. But you also have Iron Lad tell Peter and also Harry, like, hey, in 1 year, the Maker is going to come back. And so we need all hands on deck. And I'm hoping that by that point, you would actually be ready to help us out. And you didn't have Iron Lad leave just like that. But now we have to jump over to Peter Parker, J. Jonah Jameson, and also Uncle Ben back in the present day. Now, when we do, it's the three guys going to a bakery to pick up a cake for the kid's birthday. But you can tell that Uncle Ben and JJ have something very important to ask Peter Parker. Now, let's not forget that Uncle Ben and JJ had left the Daily Bugle, and now they're trying to start their own paper because they realize that they're being controlled heavily at the Daily Bugle and not really being allowed to report the different things they actually want to report about. So why not go ahead and leave that place behind and start your own company up? And so once you have Peter being able to pick up the cake, we do learn that they want Peter to join their paper, to lead the Daily Bugle and come to their side. Now for Peter, he has the right to be concerned because he has kids to raise. He has a family to provide. He needs that money. But his Uncle Ben and JJ say, hey, talk to Mary Jane, but also I want you to know that if you do come over to our side, you're going to get paid a whole lot more than you do now at the Daily Bugle. Now, I kind of want to skip over the whole birthday party for the Parker kids because to me personally, it did not feel that important. But for Jonathan Hickman, almost every single thing he writes, every single page in his books becomes somewhat important for something else down the road in later chapters of that run. And so for me, I'm kind of like, this moment right here could be somewhat important for a later chapter down the road. But we kind of see that you have Peter, Mary Jane, and the family having a good old time celebrating the birthdays for Richard and Mary. Now, with all that being said, well, JJ is there as well. And really, Uncle Ben brought JJ because he believes that JJ is getting, kind of lonely in his later life. And so you have JJ being there, but he only brought one present because he had no idea it was both of the kids' party. So he thought it was just for Richard, Peter and Mary Jane's oldest child, their son. And so he brought Richard a book. And the reason why, because, well, growing up for JJ, he didn't have a lot of friends. And he wanted to make sure that for Richard, he does not go through the same thing as well. And kind of want Richard to kind of have some life skills while growing up as a teenager. And so it's kind of a cool moment, but at the end of the party, you do have everyone kind of happy about the idea of everyone being there. But now we have to jump into the real important stuff. But now we jump over to the home of the Kingpin, and this is where things get good, y'all. Okay, so as we were told, the Kingpin is the ruler of Manhattan. Now, that's not all of New York. That's a good chunk of New York, but there's still other territories that we were kind of left to wonder who actually ruled over those different areas. And we kind of find out it is the Sinister Six. And so this is the Kingpin calling them in and saying, hey, I need their help to handle a certain kind of problem. And that problem is Spider-Man and the Green Goblin. So now we begin to learn about the different members of the Sinister Six, starting off with Mr. Negative. Now, Mr. Negative in this reality is very similar to his main Marvel Universe counterpart. So he does run Feast. As we all know, Feast is used as a way to kind of give people who are homeless a place to stay, a shelter, but also provide food for people in need. But at nighttime, he has a gang that he is able to control their minds with to kind of control Queens. So now we know that Queens belongs over to him. The next person would be Walter Hardy. Now, Walter Hardy, we already know, is the father to Felicia Hardy. Now, Walter Hardy, he was a very famous thief, but apparently in this reality, once he was able to collect a huge amount of wealth, he was able to retire. Now, his wife died, but he was still around to raise his daughter, Felicia. So we kind of get a first look at her and kind of left to wonder when we're going to see her later in Ultimate Spider-Man. But we do learn that Walter is actually the ruler of the Bronx. And so now we have two territories. Now the next one would be Craven. And we do learn that Craven is from Russia still, but he was kicked out of Russia when you had basically Colossus and his sister Magic being able to actually take over the country. Now, with them being kicked out of Russia, but still having some money, but also be a very well hunter, he was able to take over Staten Island. So that area right there belongs to him. And the last one would be, well, Mysterio. Now, apparently, Mysterio is the mysterious character that no one truly knows much about. But apparently, he is the ruler of Brooklyn. So we have most of the members of the Sinister Six, but there's still one person missing. And at first, I was kind of like, well, you got Mysterio, you got, Mr. Negative, Craven, you got Hardy, the Kingpin. Who's the last one? And he said, this one rules the underground. And apparently the others can't live without him because he is their foundation. And I was kind of wondering, could it be Vermin? But it's not Vermin. No, the last one would be the Mole Man. He is the ruler of the underground of New York. And so we now have our Sinister Six. But now it's time for them to go after Spider Man, to go after the Green Goblin. And y'all, let me tell y'all, I'm kind of hype for the next chapter of Ultimate Spider Man. I feel like now Jonathan Hickman is truly getting into the action part of his story here, the true action parts. But this is where Okay, so it's time for us to continue our coverage over Ultimate Spider Man. And now we pick up with issue number 9. Now, I actually do have a small problem with this issue. And the reason why, because I kind of felt like we were supposed to get the actual Sinister Six in this issue. And sadly, we don't. Like, we do get one member at least, but not the entire team coming after Spider Man and the Green Goblin. And so for me, this issue is kind of a letdown, but still somewhat decent because we still kind of build that bond between Peter Parker and the Green Goblin. And I already know that sooner or later, that bond is going to break for some kind of crazy reason. But either way, let's go ahead and continue our coverage over Ultimate Spider-Man. Now, we do pick up with J. Jonah Jameson and also Uncle Ben. Now, these two characters, they're very happy at the moment. And the reason why, because they were able to leave the Daily Bugle months ago and then be able to create their own paper called The Paper. And really, The Paper has taken off. Now, Mary Jane, she's also part of their crew. She's kind of like their promoter, getting the word out there so that people can begin to buy their paper physically or, of course, on their computers. Now, for Uncle Ben, he's kind of like, listen, we left the Daily Bugle to be able to cover some more serious stories that the Bugle does not even bother try to cover. And here we are right now just covering Spider-Man. And that tells us that the reason why they're so popular right now is because of Spider-Man. And for Uncle Ben, it's okay for right now, but sooner or later, they want to tackle the bigger stories, the dark secrets in the world that's being covered up right now at the moment. And so you have Uncle Ben and JJ being happy for the moment, but sooner or later, they got to tackle those bigger stories than Spider-Man. But now we have to jump over to Peter Parker and also Harry Osborn. Now, they were called over to the lab of Doc Ock. And here's the reason why. Because in an earlier chapter, we had talked about how Iron Lad, Tony Stark, his suit is connected to Peter Parker's suit, but also, well, Harry Osborn's suit as well. And so for Peter and Harry, they don't really like the idea of being connected to Iron Lad's suit, but also feeling like they're under his watch as well. And so for Doc Ock, he has been working on different ways to actually fix that problem. Now, for Harry Osborn, it was purely easy to fix his problem because remember, Harry Osborn and Doc Ock, they had created the Green Goblin suit out of old parts of Stark Tech. And so with them, all they had to do was install a few updates to block out Iron Lad from no longer being connected to Harry Osborn's suit. Now, for Peter, it was completely different because as we learned in the earlier chapter, Peter Parker's suit is really special in many kind of ways. And so for Doc Ock, he was not really able to say, you know what, I'll give a few updates to turn off that connection. He had to do things a tad bit different. And so you have Doc Ock creating a brand new suit for Peter Parker. And of course, it is the Iron Spider suit. Now, for me personally, I kind of thought that we would see Peter Parker in the Iron Spider suit, but also using the suit as a way to fight against the Sinister Six. But you have Peter Parker say no. And here is the reason why. Because in an earlier chapter, Peter Parker and also Harry Osborn were both given AI systems. Now, for Peter, his AI is based off himself. For Harry Osborn, his AI is based off his father. But either way, you have Peter basically talking to, well, Peter. And so you have both Peters kind of wondering, what to do with the Iron Spider suit. Now, for both Peters, they kind of don't like the idea of the Iron Spider suit because there's too much going on. For Peter Parker in this reality, he's a very simple man. He loves his current suit. And so he tells Doc Ock, no, I will not be taking your Iron Spider suit. Now, for Doc Ock, he can't believe that he heard a no for once. But either way, you have Peter say, listen, I just love the basic idea of who I am, the basic Spider-Man suit. And so for Doc Ock, he does give Peter a brand new suit. It's just spandex, and that's really it. No extra tech at all. But now we have to jump back over to Uncle Ben and also J. Jonah Jameson. Now, you have these two characters still at the paper just working, but we finally get an idea of what they're trying to work on. And we kind of find out that you have JJ and also Uncle Ben trying to dig into what happened when it came to the Stark and Stain Company. That really started off this whole entire event of the Ultimate Marvel Universe. So we're now kind of have to wonder what kind of secrets are these two characters actually going to find. But now we have to jump over to Peter Parker and also Harry Osborn. Now, for me personally, this was where the book kind of let me down because the cover of the book, you thought at first like, oh, we're going to see Peter Parker and Harry Osborn fighting against the Sinister Six, but we don't. Instead, we actually get just Black Cat, and that is it. The weakest member of the actual group. For me personally, it kind of felt like this was a trial run for Peter and Harry when it comes to fighting against the Sinister Six. Like, give them the weakest one at first, and then down the road, they can face the stronger ones in the other books. Either way, when it comes to Black Cat, he was able to shoot a blast to shut down the suit of Harry Osborn. Now, for Peter Parker, he's actually lucky because, let's not forget, he's now only wearing spandex. So right now, his suit cannot be shut down at all. And so you have Peter being able to continue on to fight against the Black Cat. Now, their battle does go on for a few more pages, but it gets to the point where it seems like the Black Cat is about to kill off Peter Parker. Now, luckily for Peter, you have Harry Osborn's suit come back online, where he is able to shoot Black Cat right off the rooftop. Now, onto the rooftop, and they're very high up, so he hits the ground very hard. And at first, they're kind of wondering if he is dead. But then Peter realized that he is moving. And so you have Peter say, hey, Harry, call an ambulance right now because that man is still alive and he needs help. Now, for Peter Parker, he's actually very upset with Harry because for him, Harry could have killed off Black Cat, and they're not killers. But you have Harry sit down with Peter Parker and begin to give him the life lesson like, hey, listen, I understand that you want to live by some kind of code, but in this kind of world, that code is not going to work out. You will not survive. It's him saying like, listen, if it gets to the point in the middle of one of our battles where it seems like you might die, if I have to kill somebody to save your life, I'm going to do that because you and I are best friends right now. But at the same time, I have to realize they are not going to hold back. So why should we? And so for Peter Parker, he kind of understands what Harry is saying. We already know for Peter, he still not be okay with the idea of somebody being killed in the battle. But for right now, for Peter, because Black Cat actually survived, it's kind of him forgiving Harry Osborn and let the two characters continue on with their friendship. But like I said earlier, sooner or later, that friendship is going to break. The question is now, when is it actually going to break? But this is okay, so getting back into some more Ultimate Spider-Man, we do pick up with issue number 10. Now, if you are new to my channel, you're going to find out very quickly here that I'm a huge fan of the Ultimate Marvel Universe, the new one. Like, I like Black Panther, I like Spider-Man, I like the Ultimates, I'm hyped for Wolverine. Now, for Ultimate X-Men, That book right there is okay, could be better, but like, hey, it's there. I still give it some love. But in the last few months, I became a huge fan of the Ultimates. And really, I felt like the Ultimates was the best book coming out of Marvel in the Ultimate Marvel universe. Now, I still have some love for Ultimate Spider-Man, but the whole idea of a slow burn was kind of killing me there. But again, it's Jonathan Hickman. He's known for being that slow burn writer. But then by the end of his work, you're going to be all like, ooh, that was good. And so for issue number 10 is him continuing the whole idea of being this slow burn storyline he's making for Ultimate Spider-Man, but it's still good. Like this issue right here, it's kind of like, ooh, things are beginning to fall in place. Things probably like next 2-3 issues are going to pop off very soon, especially because of Uncle Ben and J. Jonah Jameson. Let me explain. And so getting into the opening pages for today's storyline, we actually pick up with Uncle Ben and also J. Jonah Jameson. Now, the opening pages of this book does a great job in reminding us that in this reality, besides Uncle Ben being alive, that these two characters used to work at the Daily Bugle, but they left the company behind. And the reason why? Because it was owned by Wilson Fisk. Now, when it comes to Wilson Fisk, he says, listen, if I don't want that story published, it's not going to be published at all. And so for our two characters, they hated that a lot. They had so many great stories that were not told because of Wilson Fisk. And so they left the company and formed their own company called The Paper. Now, their main goal right now is to figure out the big secret when it involves Wilson Fisk. Like, apparently they know that he's holding some kind of big secret and they want to get to the bottom of it. And so we kind of find out that Uncle Ben was able to locate the lawyer/assistant who works for the Kingpin. Now, his name is James Weasley. And matter of fact, over in the main Marvel universe, there was a James Weasley who was also like a lawyer/assistant for the Kingpin in that reality as well. Either way, for our two characters, their main goal is to figure out who had actually bought out the company Stark and Stain, because after Howard and Tony Stark had disappeared, the company kind of fell out there for almost anybody to grab. Now, as we all know, it was Wilson Fisk who bought out the company, but then he gave that company over to Oscorp. Now, here's the catch though, because right now, there's no actual records that actually show that Oscorp or Kingpin had bought out the company. And so their goal right now is to figure out who had exactly bought out the company. Now, for our two characters, they realize that the actual purchase of the company has been going through many, many shell companies around the world. And that's the big problem right there, because they're not really able to pinpoint who bought out the company. But Uncle Ben and JJ, they found some paperwork. And of course, at the very bottom of it has a very nice signature on it. And that signature is James Weasley, who works for the Wilson Fisk. And so they're kind of like, hey, listen, did Fisk buy out the company of Stark and Stain? Now for James, he's not really trying to give our characters any kind of info that could get his boss in trouble. But he also tells our two characters, you are kind of looking at this in the wrong way. You need to take a different angle. And then he calls security, and our two characters are kicked out of the restaurant that he was at. Now for JJ and Uncle Ben, they kind of took that as maybe, just maybe, Wilson Fisk did not buy out the company. Maybe, possibly, somebody else bought out the company. And so you have our two characters being able to actually sit down, kind of go through all the different paperwork to see all the different kinds of shell companies that were actually used to kind of hide the big secret of who bought out the company Stark and Stain. And so after a while, you have our two characters realize that the actual owner of the company is Oscorp. Now, as we all know, it was Fisk who gave Harry Osborn the actual company. And that was when Harry found out all the different Iron Man gear that was left behind. And he used that gear as a way to make the Green Goblin outfit. But for our two characters, they're getting closer and closer to figuring out that the Green Goblin is actually Harry Osborn. But first, they gotta go to Oscorp. And so you have our two characters go over to Oscorp. Now, let's not forget that by this point in the Ultimate Marvel universe, with Norman Osborn being dead, Harry Osborn now being the owner, he shares the ownership with his wife, Gwen Osborn, or possibly Gwen Stacy. I want to say it's Gwen Osborn. Either way, those two characters work together when it comes to, owning the company. But she does most of the work when it comes to the company. Either way, you have Uncle Ben and JJ go over to her office. Now, we also can't forget that it was her and Harry who gave Uncle Ben, who gave JJ all the money they need to be able to start their company. And so it's kind of like, hey, Gwen, listen, I know that in the past that you had helped us when it came to starting our company, but we have been working on a story here. You see, this story is kind of telling us that you guys have bought out Stark and Stain by using a bunch of shell companies, and want to know why. Why are you guys trying so hard to actually hide the actual purchase of the company? At the same time, are you guys working with Wilson Fisk? Now, Gwen, she gets very upset. She's like, hey, you know what? Get the heck out of here right now before I demand my money back and your company goes straight into the toilet. And so they leave. Now, for our characters, they don't get the answer they're kind of looking for, but they're getting closer and closer to getting that answer they really want for their story. Now, word gets back over to Mary Jane because let's not forget, in this reality, Harry Osborn is the Green Goblin, but he fights alongside with Peter Parker, who's Spider-Man. They're a superhero duo, but at the same time, they're close friends now. And so for Gwen and Mary Jane, they're not close friends, but they're somewhat friends. Really, for Mary Jane, she says, listen, I like the girl, but I can't really consider her a friend. But Gwen called Mary Jane like, hey, listen, your uncle or Peter's uncle and JJ, they're getting a tad bit close to some big secrets going on in our group. And I want to tell you right now, they need to stop it. But at the same time, if they don't, how long do we have until the actual story drops? And so Uncle Ben say, well, you know what? She has about 1 week before we actually drop the story. And so, just like that, Mary Jane tells Gwen, Gwen tells Harry, and we already know Harry freaks out because that means those two guys are getting very close to figuring out that Harry Osborn is the Green Goblin. And so 2 days later, you have Harry Osborn being able to meet up with Uncle Ben and also J. Jonah Jameson. Now, here's the thing, guys. You see, this meeting for me is kind of cool because you had Uncle Ben and JJ just basically taking bets against one another if Harry would do certain things when they finally met with him. And so you have one bet going in Uncle Ben's way and the other bet going in JJ's way. Either way, you have our two characters tell Harry like, hey, listen, we sat down, we looked over the notes. We did our research and we realized that you bought out Stark and Stain Company. You found their tech. You're using their tech right now to be the Green Goblin. But here's the problem we have right now. Why are you using the same tech that Fisk basically gave you? Because like I said earlier, Fisk had owned the company, but then gave the company over to Harry. But it seems like they worked together to make sure the actual purchase of the company was hidden from the public. The whole idea that Stark and Stain Company was bought out by shell companies. But in reality, it was bought out by Oscorp. And so you have Harry say, listen, Wilson did give me the company. But the thing was, he had no idea that the company still had a bunch of tech laying around, especially the Iron Man, Iron Lad tech. And so you had Harry say, I was able to take that tech and turn that tech into my Green Goblin suit. But I'm trying to use that suit as a way to bring down Wilson Fisk. So yes, he gave me the company, but he had no idea the tech of the company was still inside his main home. And so now I'm trying to use that tech to bring him down. And here's the reason why. See, you have Harry tell us that Peter told him, you can trust Uncle Ben. You can trust JJ. Those two guys, they're the best guys that have in your corner. And so you have Harry hand over a USB. Now, this USB drive is really important because it contains everything that Harry and Peter had learned from Iron Lad. Everything that was left behind in the tech suit that Howard Stark and Tony Stark had made. everything going on behind the scenes, the Maker's Council, who controls Wilson Fisk, like everything that Uncle Ben and JJ needs to bring down Wilson Fisk is now on that USB drive. And that is a good thing, but a bad thing at the same time, because yes, they could bring down Wilson Fisk, but the problem is if they let out this information, they're putting targets on their back. They're basically asking for different people who are close to the Kingpin, who are higher than Kingpin, to come after them. But for Uncle Ben and JJ, it's worth the risk. They got to get these things out there for the whole entire world to know what is really happening behind their backs. What are the higher up people not telling the everyday Joes out there in the world? And so things get even crazier because by the ending of this video, or this book, sorry, by the end of the storyline, we see Uncle Ben, we see JJ, they are about to publish the story. As a matter of fact, they do publish the actual story. The word is out there. The truth behind Wilson Fisk. That is just their starting off point. If they're able to continue on, they're going for everyone involved with the Kingpin. But that now means most likely the Sinister Six are going after Uncle Ben, going after JJ, going after their loved ones like Mary Jane, Peter Parker, and also his kids. Everything is about to get a whole lot crazier for our hero now. But this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please, okay, so getting back into our coverage over Ultimate Spider-Man, we do pick up with issue number 11. Now, for issue number 11, I feel like just alone, we could actually say that something big is coming very soon for Ultimate Spider-Man, but I feel like it won't happen in the next issue, which is issue 12. I feel like it'll be issue number 13 as a way to start off the year pretty strong for year 2 of Ultimate Spider-Man. But either way, we do pick up with Spider-Man, Peter Parker, just on a stakeout at the moment. Now, he is waiting for Harry Osborn, but apparently Harry is late. Now, for me, this was an automatic callback to what happened in the previous issue. Let me explain. You see, in our last issue, Uncle Ben and J. Jonah Jameson were able to figure out that Harry Osborn is the Green Goblin. Now, we already knew that sooner or later, if Harry Osborn is the Green Goblin, they're going to find out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. But I'll save that for the end of this video. But either way, you do have Peter call up Harry. He's late, and he calls up Doc Ock as well. Now, Harry does not answer. Doc Ock does, but you have Doc Ock try his best to locate Harry for Peter Parker. But apparently, before you have Doc Ock being able to tell Peter where Harry is at, that is when something pops off near Peter, and he has to go and be a hero. Now, we do learn that apparently a bank is being robbed by different men who work for Mr. Negative. Now, remember, Mr. Negative is part of the Sinister Six, and it has been a while since we saw a member of the Sinister Six pop up and try to go against Spider-Man. Now, at first, it's just his men who are trying to rob this bank. And so you have Peter Parker go in as Spider-Man and being able to fight against all these different thugs who work for Mr. Negative. Now, for me, it was kind of cool to see Peter Parker on his own again. And the only reason why, because even though I like the idea of Spider-Man teaming up with the Green Goblin Harry Osborn, sometimes I just want to see Peter on his own to see if he is able to handle different problems on his own and stop relying on Harry to be next to him to handle different things popping up. But either way, once you have Peter being able to take down all the different thugs who are part of Mr. Negative's crew, well, Peter is then confronted by Mr. Negative. Now, Mr. Negative has two different reasons of why to bring down Peter Parker, Spider-Man. The first is that, well, Mr. Negative is part of the Sinister Six who's working for the Kingpin. But on top of that, let's not forget the Black Cat who was taken out earlier really by Harry Osborn and got seriously injured thanks to Harry Osborn. But for Mr. Negative, all he knows that it was the Green Goblin and Spider-Man who had technically hurt Black Cat. And so it's him saying like, hey, I was assigned to bring you down, but at the same time, I kind of want to get revenge against you. Now, for Mr. Negative, he does realize that it's just Spider-Man here, that Green Goblin's not here. And for Peter, he's all like, yeah, he's not here. And for Mr. Negative, this is a great moment because now it's Peter on his own. Can Spider-Man fight against an army of people who are being controlled by Mr. Negative's power? And so we see Peter Parker trying his best to fight against an army of different people who are being controlled by him. Now, we do see that Peter Parker was able to survive the battle against Mr. Negative. Now, it was just barely, but he was able to survive and he was able to get back home. But when he does, he's then confronted by Mary Jane. Now, this is a very important conversation because it's Mary Jane kind of realizing that what Peter does is very dangerous. At first, she kind of did know what he was doing, but like she enjoyed the idea of her husband being that hero. But now everything is going to change because now it's Mary Jane saying like, hey, Peter, I need to know, like, do you love the idea of fighting? Now, the reason why she asked that question, because for Peter, he was a nerd growing up. Unfortunately, he had a rough life being picked on by bullies, and he had only been in one fight. And that was against Flash Thompson. And that was back in the 8th grade. Ever since then, the man has not been in a fight. And so you have Peter say like, no, I hate the idea of fighting. But at the same time, I understand that I'm the only person sometimes that can bring down different people in this city. I'm that person that a lot of people kind of rely on to handle different kinds of situations. And I love that feeling as well. Now, also, it's Mary Jane wondering, like, should she be scared? And the reason why, because all the videos, all the pictures, everything going on, she's kind of worried about the idea that sooner or later, everything will come back home to her and the kids. And they could possibly get hurt because of Peter being Spider-Man. And so it's her asking Peter, will you tell me when I should be scared? When will you tell me that I should run? Like, will you tell me I should run when things get too serious? And it's Peter saying, yes, I will tell you when to be scared. I will tell you to get the heck out of our home and get somewhere safe because things are popping off. I will be there to tell you. But it's her wondering, like, when is it going to happen? Like, she has that fear, and that fear is continuing to grow. And the problem is that kind of fear could do some serious damage to their relationship. Now, for a brief moment, I want to jump back over to the Sinister Six. And the reason why, because you have them having another meeting where you have the Kingpin wondering why Mr. Negative was not able to bring down Peter Parker. Now, at first, it's him believing that he let Peter go. But you have Mr. Negative say, I did not let him go. It only took him a few minutes to take down all the different people I threw at him. I kind of realized then at that moment that I did not stand a chance. Now, this kind of led to me kind of being partially sad when it comes to this issue. And the reason why, because on the cover, you see Black Cat and also Spider-Man. You're like, okay, here we go. Let's bring in some good old drama into the comics. Black Cat being that other woman in Peter's life. No, she's only here for one page, and that is it. Where basically we kind of find out the Black Cat, who got injured by the Green Goblin and Peter Parker, he's out of commission. And so now his daughter, Felicia Hardy, is going to be the one in charge of his territory when it comes to the Sinister Six. And that's really it. We only see it for one panel, and we move on. Because we now got to jump back over to Peter Parker and Uncle Ben. Now, the ending of this book is really more of Peter Parker meeting up with Uncle Ben. Now, when he does, it's Uncle Ben telling Peter Parker straight up like, hey man, listen, I want to tell you that we know that you're Spider-Man. Now, technically, it's just him, but he does tell Peter that sooner or later, JJ is going to figure out that Peter is also Spider-Man. They already know that Harry is the Green Goblin. Only took them like a few more days to figure out that Peter was Spider-Man. And so right now, it's Uncle Ben saying, like, listen, you gotta be better than this. You gotta be more careful. Here comes the big problem. Your secret is getting out there very easily. I figured it out. Mary Jane knows. Sooner or later, other people are going to know that you are Spider-Man. You need to get better at this and making sure no one else finds out your secret. Now, Peter also tells Uncle Ben that Mary Jane's getting scared of the idea of her now knowing that he is Spider-Man, but also him being Spider-Man. And Uncle Ben's saying, what'd you tell her? And he says, I told her when she needs to be scared. Uncle Ben asks, do you know when that will happen? He says, yes. Uncle Ben says, I'm going to tell you right now, you technically don't know when it's going to come. I'm going to tell you this as well. I was able to enjoy an entire life with the lady I love, your Aunt May. But can you say that for yourself? Peter says no. Is Peter realizing that if he wants to keep Mary Jane alive, he has to be better keeping his secret, but also making sure that he can actually protect his family. But this Okay, so getting back into our coverage over the Ultimate Spider-Man series, we do pick up with issue number 12. Now, issue number 12 is, well, of course, a Christmas special issue. Now, we're going to spend Christmas with the Parkers, but also with the Watsons as well, Mary Jane's family. It gives us a chance to kind of learn what's going on with Mary Jane and her mother, and also with Mary Jane and her sister as well. There is a lot of drama going on with this family. Now, if you only care for Peter Parker and want to know what's happening with him and possibly Harry Osborn, yeah, it comes at the very end of this storyline, because the entire issue is really more of us just learning about Mary Jane and her family drama. But either way, let's go ahead and get into today's storyline. And so getting into the opening pages for today's video, we do pick up with Uncle Ben and J. Jonah Jameson. Now, these two characters are just arriving at the home of Peter Parker and Mary Jane for a Christmas party. Now, right off the bat, you have Uncle Ben tell us that it has been a very long time since Mary Jane and Gail had talked to one another, Gail being Mary Jane's sister. Now, apparently, every single year, Mary Jane will invite her sister over, but her sister does not come over at all. But at the same time, there's a lot of bad blood between them, especially Mary Jane towards Gail. So yes, she does invite her sister over, but at the same time, she's very upset with her sister about something happening in the past. And honestly, with Uncle Ben is him telling us that with Gail being there, that's just one big surprise. But with Madeline being there, Mary Jane's mother, that is another big surprise right there, because Madeline is hardly ever around. Now, with all that being said, we also learn from Madeline, she's been married 3 times, but apparently when it comes to her being married, it's been divorced or widowed when it comes to her 3 past husbands. And honestly, I kind of want to know what happened when it came to her 3 past marriages. But either way, we see her kind of micromanaging Mary Jane in the kitchen, because Mary Jane can't cook. Matter of fact, Mary Jane barely cook at all. And so it's her telling her daughter, like, hey, listen, I think you're doing things wrong when it comes to your food. And to be honest here, for Mary Jane, it's not really like she hates her mom. It's really more of she can't stand her mom for a long amount of time. So it's kind of like that person you have your job or in your family, and you only deal with them as long as you're with other people, or possibly, with them for a small amount of time. That's Mary Jane and her mother. She only wished that her mom told her when she'll be in town, because she can only deal with her mom for a small amount of time because the way her mom acts. But either way, it does seem like Madeline is gonna be here for a good while, and you see what I mean here in a moment. Now, just for a quick moment here, I want to say that you have Mary Jane give her daughter her phone to play with to keep her busy. Now, here's the thing. She does tell her mom that Gwen keeps calling, and that right there is going to be very important for the end of this issue, leading into, well, the January issue, where we kind of find out what's going on with Peter Parker and also Harry Osborn as well. But we can go ahead and kind of begin to learn what's going on between Mary Jane and Gail. Now, we learn here that many years ago, you had Gail tell Mary Jane, do not, I repeat, do not marry Peter Parker at all. And the reason why? Because he is boring. And matter of fact, when once you had Peter Parker and Mary Jane had kids, for Gail, it really did upset her a whole lot more, because now to her, her sister is stuck with the wrong guy, because now they had kids with one another. Now for Mary Jane, she's a happy woman. She loves the idea of being with her husband, Peter Parker. She loves the idea of having kids with Peter Parker. She loves the idea of just having a family. But for Gail, it's like, no, you chose the wrong guy. You should have a guy in your life who brought more excitement into your life. Now, there is a special reason why Gail's here this year for the Christmas party. But we transition over to Uncle Ben, Madeline, and also Aunt Anna. Now, Aunt Anna being the aunt to Mary Jane and also Gail, because she is the sister to Madeline. Now, we do learn here from Aunt Anna why Gail came to this year's party, because she tells Uncle Ben and also tells Madeline that, well, unfortunately, Gail is going through a divorce. Now, for Madeline, she's kind of like, I know it sucks, but she has to move on. Now, we're going to learn more about divorce going on with Gail and her ex-husband now, but I kind of want to shift our focus onto Madeline. And the reason why, because even though her daughter is going through a divorce like she has twice now, apparently, she's also telling Uncle Ben about the idea of just moving on, because sooner or later, you have to accept the fact that you're no longer with that person and it's time to move on. And the reason why Madeline is saying that, because Madeline wants to be with Uncle Ben, but Uncle Ben can tell that she is a huge red flag and he just walks away. Now, you do have Mary Jane go complain to Peter Parker about her sister. Now, just for real quick here, you do kind of see that Peter Parker is not saying anything at all. And for Mary Jane, she doesn't realize there's something off with her husband. But this right here is going to be our first hint that there is something different about Peter Parker. Really, we're going to get another hint here in a moment. But you have Mary Jane and Gail being able to talk to one another and kind of learn why Gail came here for this Christmas party. Now, we already know why, because she's going through a divorce. And so she tells Mary Jane, hey, listen, I'm going through a divorce. I found out my husband had been cheating on me for years, and people knew about it, but never told me anything. And the reason why Gail came to party was to kind of compare her life to Mary Jane's life, to kind of see that Mary Jane's life is not that boring at all. And matter of fact, Peter Parker is a great guy. She also realized there's something different about Peter Parker. Again, a second hint right there that something is going on with Peter Parker. But for Gail, she kind of realized that she made a huge mistake calling Peter Parker boring, calling the whole idea of getting married, having kids boring. But now it's her realizing that Mary Jane did a good job and found the right man for her. Now, you do have Gail tell Mary Jane that she is sorry, but you didn't have the daughter of Mary Jane say, hey, listen, Mom, Gwen is calling again. And so Mary Jane, she realized she has to take the call to figure out what in the world is going on with Gwen. But just real quick, I want to say that you have JJ also thinking about the idea of asking out Madeline, the mother of Mary Jane, and the reason why he finds her very attractive, even though there's a huge red flag on her face at the moment. And really, you have Uncle Ben just step away and say, you know what, man? If you want to ask her out, go ahead and ask her out. And so he will very soon. But yes, let's go ahead and get back into why is Gwen calling up Mary Jane so much. And here's the reason why. Harry Osborn is missing. As we all know, Harry Osborn is Gwen's husband in this reality. But apparently, she came back in town 6 days ago and Harry was supposed to pick her up. He did not. She went straight home and did not find him. That was 6 days ago. And the question is right now, where in the world is Harry Osborn? Now, for Mary Jane, she also freaks out and begins to ask Peter Parker as they both went into their bedroom to say, like, hey, Peter, do you know what's going on with Harry? Where is he? But then she realized that's not her husband. It's somebody pretending to be Peter Parker, which means the entire time Peter was not there. And the question is right now, how long has Peter gone missing? And so for the ending of this issue, we see that Craven the Hunter has both Harry and also Peter Parker tied up in chains. And the book ends on that note right there, leading into issue number 13 that comes out, well, next year. And so with that being said, guys, this is where we're going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.